UFC 255 is not the most stacked card in the world. However, it does feature a lot of good young prospects on the prelims of the card, and I'm going to go through all of them today in this video. These are my fighters to watch out for at UFC 255, starting with the one that I want you guys to watch out for the most, Joaquin Buckley. I think Impa Kasanganay should have been the one watching out for him, but he wasn't, and that's how he was on the other end of a highlight reel KO that was the best KO move I've ever seen of all time, I feel like. I know a lot of people want to say what was the greatest KO of all time. I like to change the argument because there's always different arguments. I think this is the best KO move I've seen of all time, and why I'm saying that is because there's other aspects to the greatest KO of all time argument, which is what was on the line, what happened, when did it happen, was it in record time in the first round. I think this was the best KO move of all time, and now he's on everyone's radar. However, he's beaten a lot of good guys before then. Jackie Gosch 7-2, Chris Harris 11-4. He jumped straight into the deep end of competition, and that's what I respect about him, and that's what I don't respect about his opponent Jordan Wright, because Joaquin Buckley was in Bellator 5 fights into his career, taking on 9-3 Chris Heavily, then Jackie Gosch 5-0, lost that fight by KO in the first round, but went on to beat Justin Patterson 9-2, Vinicius de Jesus 5-1, Logan Storley 7-0, monster, now still doing well, just fought Amasov in Bellator last weekend, lost that fight in a razor close controversial decision. Some people thought he won that fight, so these aren't bad people for Joaquin Buckley to be losing against, but still, he's had great performances since then. Chris Harris 11-4. Jackie Gosch again in a rematch, redeeming himself for his first loss. 7-2 over at LFA. I just like his style. Although a lot of people forget about this. He was on the other side of a highlight reel KO from the old Kevin Holland, who's going to be taking on Jack Hermansson at middleweight in a couple of weeks. A lot of people forget about that, but he bounced back very quickly against Impa Kasanganay, got rid of that sour taste out of his mouth. Now I feel like he's going to start putting together some momentum. An 11-0 Jordan Wright, I know on paper, an 11-0 opponent is the best opponent he's faced in his career. However, this 11-0 opponent, this ain't the usual 11-0 opponent, okay? This is the Beverly Hills Ninja. You know? And he trains at Jackson Wink, so I'm not doubting that maybe he has a high amount of potential. But I do notice every single fight of his ending by KO. Every single fight but one of his fights, Jordan Wright this is as well, ending by KO in the first round. One of them ending in the second round, Gabriel Checo, in his fight before his UFC debut. But I do want to say this. He has lost a fight to Anthony Hernandez. I know that got overturned, but he did lose that fight. He got TKO'd in the first round. It got overturned on the Contender Series due to Hernandez's drug test, I believe. But still, moving on, he's beat absolute cans his entire career. And this is where I don't like it, because in Jordan Wright's 5th ever fight, he took on Julian Hernandez, who was 0-10. Well done, you KO'd him in the first round. I believe that a guy who's 0-10 is worse than a guy making their debut at 0-0, and that's what Jordan Wright's opponents were until then. 0-21, another one of his opponents. That isn't that you might win and you might go on to have a good career as a debuting fighter, but you're just making your debut, so there's a good chance you'll lose. That's you've tried to be fighting, and you've lost that many times without getting a win. And if, honestly, yeah, if you're 0-7 or 0-5, and you're continuing with your career, you don't want to be world champ. Let's just be real. You're showing up for paychecks. If this guy's 0-21, Edward Dalby, let me just see what his record is right now. Oh, right, he's 0-22 now. Hasn't fought since that fight, you know what I mean? Like, it's just worrying that these are the opponents they've given to Jordan Wright. I like Joaquin Buckley's style. He looked really good in the first round against Kevin Holland. Of course, he took that fight on short notice. Looked a little bit worse in the second round. Got a little bit outstruck there. Well, not a little bit outstruck. He got majorly outstruck in the second round. But the first round was somewhat competitive. Then in the third round, Kevin Holland laid on the big shot that got himself the highlight reel KO. But then Joaquin Buckley showed how good he is against Impa Kasanganay, who's a real talented, undefeated fighter. Either this, Jordan Wright is a secret monster, and we don't know it yet because we haven't seen him jump up in competition whatsoever. His best opponent on his record is 11-4 Gabriel Checo, 16-10 Ike Villanueva. and that was stopped by a doctor stoppage, and it looked like Jordan Wright might be slowing down towards the end of that fight as well, but he looked good, but we just don't know yet. I feel like we've seen Buckley in there with good opponents. Impa Kasanganay is no joke. Jackie Gosh is no joke, and he redeemed that loss. Chris Harris is no joke. Well, I don't even know if he's a joke or not, to be honest with you, but he's a good fighter, 11-4. Same with Jordan Wright. I just feel like we've seen, even in his loss to Kevin Holland, who's a top-level fighter that now, if he beats Jack Hermansson, might be looking at one fight from a title shot. We've seen Joaquin Buckley do good against guys, even in losses, and I just know more about his skill set than I do Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright's very good. He's got a good submission game. He's got good stand-up as well. He throws wheel kicks and stuff like that. He's got nasty submissions. He latches them up real quick. I just feel like Joaquin Buckley's going to go out there with reckless onslaught with the hands, and I think he's going to catch Jordan Wright on the chin and be the first legit level fighter that Jordan Wright has ever taken on, other than Gabriel Checo, who's 11-5 and hasn't really beaten anyone good in his career either. He's beat some decent guys, to be honest with you. Lost to Jake Collier. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as I see that, though, that just really does worry me. You know, because he has beat some good guys, this Gabriel Checo. But I see Jake Collier on his record. But that was in 2014 when Jake Collier didn't have a higher blood pressure level than his IQ. So, I mean, it's a good thing, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm discounting Jordan Wright a little bit here, but I just, you know what I'm seeing here, guys. Joaquin Buckley is more tested. He's fought better competition. I think he'll go out there, let his hands fly, and catch Jordan Wright square on the chin in the first round. Plus, this is Jordan Wright coming down to middleweight. He had his debut in the light heavyweight division. That's going to be a little bit of a weight change. I know he's fought at middleweight before, but still, I'm going to be going with Joaquin Buckley in this fight, getting the job done. Moving on to my next fighter to watch out for. Daniel Rodriguez is on the card. D-Rod, I'm looking forward to it. Tap Out LA, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. Obviously working with the legendary Eddie Bravo. I mean, dangerous guy is Daniel Rodriguez, and we found that out. Although I do feel as though we've got him a bit late in his career, which really does worry me. It worries me that we've got him this late because he's 33 years of age. Don't like that. I like a guy who's coming into the UFC to be around 26, 27. I think that's the perfect age where you're not too young to get exposed, but you're old enough to know enough to then work on something and then eventually get to your prime if you keep winning fights. 33 years of age. We're going to have to rush him if he wins this fight this weekend against Nicolas Dalby, but Dalby, 18-4, great recorded fighter. I feel like we're seeing Dalby come to the end of his career. He doesn't seem to be able to grit down and get it done as he has done before. Lost a fight in Cage Warriors to Carlo Birdasoli. Peter Sobotta beat him. Zach Cummings beat him in the UFC. These are good opponents, by the way. At the time, anyway, these were legit opponents. But still, his recent fight against Jesse Ronson, it showed me a little bit of a change of the times. Okay, because I know he beat some guys in Cage Warriors. But even his fight with Alex Lahori was a close fight, back and forth. Lahori had his moments. Ross Houston, no contest. It was a good fight, though, but now Ross Houston had that terrible performance against MVP. May have won a round, but still did not look that good in that fight whatsoever. But, you know, good performances from Nicolas Dalby. I just think that last one against Jesse Ronson was just an exposure of someone who can just wait and find the shot. Dalby will be there recklessly coming forward, looking for the big punch. And if he shows up like that against Daniel Rodriguez, even if he shows up better than that against Daniel Rodriguez, if Ronson can do it to you, who now has a 20-month suspension, by the way, Daniel Rodriguez can do it to you as well. I feel like D-Rod's going to get this one done. He showed us in the Gabriel Green fight, who's a guy who was 9-2 at the time. Good fighter, went in there on short notice and gave Daniel Rodriguez a real scrap of things. We saw in that fight that D-Rod can move backwards and still land good shots, and that's what he was doing for the majority of that fight versus Gabriel Green. And I feel like the reckless aggression of Nicolas Dalby coming forward and the perfect counter shots whilst moving backwards of Daniel Rodriguez are just going to be two terrible recipes to a KO loss for Nicolas Dalby. I reckon D-Rod is going to get the job done by TKO at the end of the first round. I think there's going to be a feeling out phase. Both guys throwing some leg kicks, maybe some jabs. Then Dalby's going to look to secure the round at the end of it. And D-Rod's going to be waiting for him for a perfect 1-2. Catch him square on the chin, maybe with a hook as a counter whilst moving backwards. Dwight Grant fight was very risky for D-Rod. I do want to mention that. Dwight Grant went out there, cracked him on the chin. At least we know that D-Rod has that toughness in him. Like, he can get through bad moments. Grant hits like an absolute truck in that division. You saw even in the Joban fight with Dwight Grant. Joban was so scared to even exchange whatsoever. He just kept I mean, Grant was scared to exchange as well, to be honest with you. So it might be a little bit of both, but still, Grant's got real power in his hands. We know that he's got one-punch KO power, cracked D-Rod on the chin, and he survived and got out of it and ended up KOing Dwight Grant in that round as well. I know a lot of people say that Dwight Grant should have been given a little bit more time to maybe recover the same way D-Rod was. But if you watch how both of them went down, it was different situations, in my opinion. D-Rod went back, stopped himself from touching the canvas with his hands, rolled over, immediately looked to shelter up, went for a single leg, looked to get out of it. Dwight Grant was sort of walking and then sort of slumped into nothingness against the cage. I think it's a different look for a referee when they're looking for someone defending themselves, which is why they stopped that fight. But Daniel Rodriguez, I think, is going to get the job done against Nicolas Dalby. He's one of my locks of the night as well. Moving on up the card, another fighter to watch out for, Louis Cosce. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I think it's Cosce. I think it's Cosce. I think that's his name because I heard it in an interview and I heard him say that himself. So I'm going to go with that. He's a dangerous man, 7-0, has not fought good competition, but he hasn't got the opponent that Jordan Wright has in Joaquin Buckley. He's got a bit of a layup in Sasha Palatnikov. Dangerous guy, says he's going to go out there and get the job done. I have no doubt in my mind that Palatnikov is going to go out there and look to establish himself in the UFC because if he wins, you're in the UFC. This isn't Palatnikov 5-2 stepping up against Cosce on the regional scene. Maybe we don't know what he's in it for. This is in the UFC. Palatnikov's been given this opportunity. He's going to be coming out there to get the job done in the first round, or at least go out there with some aggression. I think that's going to backfire on him. Louis Cosce is going to get the job done by first round KO. Really looking forward to it. All of his fights in his entire career have ended by first round KO. Has not fought the best of competition. 6-4 in his debut. To be honest, isn't even that bad. 6-4 in your debut. A guy with 10 fights of experience that has a positive ratioed record against you with no experience. I actually don't mind that. But then he fought a guy 2-3, 0-0, 18-42, 4-8, 4-4. Then he jumped up against Victor Reina, 11-4. Still not the best record in the world, but he got it done in spectacular fashion in the first round and made it look easy. I think he can do the same to Sasha Palatnikov. Not to mention Palatnikov, his 2 losses are by way of KO in the first round against quick starters, other than one of them which happened in the second round against a guy who was 1-1 at the time. I don't like that. Munir Lazzez was able to go out there and KO him in the first round, and as much as I like Munir Lazzez, he's an amazing fighter, 10-1. He's not really the KO you in the first round kind of type. He'll pick you apart a little bit first. So that's a bad sign for me, in my opinion. He gets the job done, though, against Sasha Palatnikov. Munir Lazzez is a dangerous opponent. I think that Louis Cosce is going to fit in with that group of people in Munir Lazzez and get the job done. I mean, Munir Lazzez has some first-round KOs in his career, but over Arba Marathi, who is 10-9, that was his fight to get him inside the UFC, I guess. But still, I'm going to be going with Louis Cosce getting the job done over Palatnikov by first-round TKO. I'm actually going to put a specific bet on it for it to happen in the first round, but this is a risky card. This entire card, in my opinion, is just, is the hype around these prospects real? It's basically that case in every single fight across the card. Is this prospect for real? Or are we going to find out that they aren't quite at that level yet? And another prospect versus another prospect in this fight, the most competitive fight out of all of these big tests for these young guys. Kyle Daukaus is next on my list. He takes on Dustin Stoltzfus. Amazing fight. 9-1 Daukaus, 13-1 Stoltzfus. Great competition. I know Daukaus is a bit of a favourite because of his performance against Brendan Allen. I know Brendan Allen just got pieced apart by Sean Strickland on the feet, but one thing that's very different is that Daukaus was in Allen's game on the ground in the grappling situations. It looked very good there as well. Had Brendan Allen's back in very important moments, lost those positions, took that fight on short notice as well. I know he had an idea of a fight coming up. It was never officially booked, but he knew he had a fight coming up, so it wasn't really short notice. But it also wasn't a full camp. I'm sure we can all agree. And I actually said leading into that Brendan Allen fight, as I've said about 50 times now in my videos, and I won't shut the fuck up about it, I picked Daukaus to win if he had a full camp against Brendan Allen. However, I ended up picking him not to because he didn't have a full camp. Ended up gassing out in the first round, or even having a decent third round, but just not quite as explosive as he wanted to be, explosive as he wanted to be in that later round. But still, I'm going to be going with Daukaus against Dustin Stoltzfus. I like Dustin Stoltzfus. I just think that Daukaus' opponents, when you look into their records, Michael Lombardo, 8-1. Let me look up Nolan Norwood as well, who is 12-6 now. He's beat good competition, 2 in a row, 10-7, 14-5. Not great, but then Quentin Henry, 12-4 as well. He was on a 2-fight win streak before he took on Kyle Daukaus and eventually lost that fight by Darce choke in the second round. Then you look at Michael Lombardo, who's now 11-2. He was on a win streak as well, a 5-fight win streak leading into his fight against Kyle Daukaus. I look at Dustin Stoltzfus' record, and as much as he's 13-1 and he's beat similar competition opponents in terms of their records, I look into those records one step further, and I noticed some things that I don't really like. I noticed the record of Nihad Nasufovic, who was 9-4 at the time, that was coming off 2 losses in a row before his fight to Dustin Stoltzfus. That's a clear difference in Daukaus' opponents who've got momentum compared to Stoltzfus' opponents who seem to be losing it and falling apart in their career, and now Stoltzfus has got the win over him. I'll look up another one, Jonas Bilstein, another fighter who was coming off 2 losses in a row before he took on Dustin Stoltzfus. I don't like that selectiveness with opponents, and it tells me how confident his gym is with him because they waited for these guys to lose 2 in a row, not to mention the guy who Dustin Stoltzfus beat by TKO in the second round, lost a fight the month before. The month before his fight with Dustin Stoltzfus, where he lost by TKO in the second round, he got KO'd again in the second round by Artem Frolov, which is Artem Lobov's long-lost cousin, if you don't know, his Middle Eastern cousin. Goes way back, you know, T-Rex arms, all that, the same genetics and stuff, but just Middle Eastern, that's all it is. But still, Artem Frolov, I mean, he is descended from the GOAT, so maybe I can't even blame this Jonas Bilstein for losing to him, but still, you can see my point. The momentum of the opponents of Daukaus is in a completely different situation than the opponents of Stoltzfus. That's what I'm basing this fight off. Both of them are very skilled in all areas of the fight, though. Looking forward to this weekend's card. I was critical of these guys. I gave them some praise as well. That's what this video's for. Those are my fighters to watch out for at UFC 255, Figueiredo versus Perez. Click that button up there. Thank you for watching the video, and goodbye. Toodle pip. See you later.